Check, check, check. Check. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Before we proceed, I would just like to mention that tea and coffee will be available on the terrace from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Okay. So we start the second half of our symposium with a spectacular performance, Bridging the Worlds of Art and Technology by Priya Kanungo, Hindustani classical vocalist and professor, performing arts, OP Jindal Global University. Please give me a... Yes.
It's okay.
Check. Everybody, please have a seat. Uh, please have a seat.
Great to be here. Special thanks to Sadhna for bringing me here. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to begin with Kabir Bhajan. Kabir, he was somebody who cherished across faiths for his brilliant use of simple imagery to convey complex wisdom. Kabir, who advocated meditation over materialism, inclusiveness over egotism, love without attachment, and discipline without ritualism. Ritualism, yeah. So this 15th century um, poet has many uh, bhajans attributed to him. Today I will perform Manalago Yar Fakiri Me. Uh, Loosely translated for those who might not follow Hindi. It goes something like this. It's let me walk the path of the ascetic toward the world of love. I will turn to ash. Why get entangled in the ways of this world? So this is analog. Okay. Yeah, manala goyar fakir mein. मन लागो यार फकीरी में, 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 मन लागो यार फकीरी में। Balance okay? Rosa? जो सुख पाऊं नाम भजन में, जो सुख पाऊं नाम भजन में, सो सुख नाही अमीरी में, सो सुख नाही अमीरी में, मन लागो यार फकीरी में, मन लागो यार फकीरी में। भला बुरा सबका सुन लीजिए, 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 करी गुजरान गरीबी में, करी गुजरान गरीबी में, प्रेम नगर में रानी हमारी, प्रेम नगर में, प्रेम नगर में रानी हमारी, भली बनी आई सबूरी में, भली बनी आई सबूरी में, मन लागो यार फकीरी में। आखिर ये तन आखिर ये तन खाक मिलेगा, आखिर ये तन खाक मिलेगा, आखिर ये तन खाक मिलेगा, कहाँ फिरता मगरूरी में आता, फिरता मगरूरी में, कहता कबीरा, कबीरा, कहता कबीरा, कहता कबीरा, साधो साहिब मिले सबूरी में, साहिब मिले सबूरी में आए, साहिब मिले सबूरी में आए, साहिब मिले सबूरी में, मन लागो यार फकीरी 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 में. The next piece I'll be doing is actually, I would think, in my opinion, something attributed to a feminist at a time where she lived, when the word feminism probably hadn't been invented. This is Mirabai, uh, somebody who lived on her own terms and shunned royal trappings to become a mendicant and sing the praise of Krishna. Um, this song is from the movie Meera, and it was made in Tamil in 1945, in which the celebrated singer M.S. Subbulakshmi has acted and sung both as Meera. Uh, the Hindi dubbing of it was done 2 years later. चरणन की दासी, मैं हरि चरणन की चरणन की दासी, मैं हरि चरणन की दासी, मैं हरि चरणन की दासी, मलिन विषय रस त्यागी जग के, मलिन विषय रस त्यागी जग के, मलिन विषय रस त्यागी जग के, राम नाम रस प्यासी, जन्म जन्म की दासी. दुख अपमान कष्ट सब सहिया, कुटिल जगत की आसी। दुख अपमान कष्ट सब सहिया, दुख अपमान सब सहिया, दुख दुख अपमान कष्ट सब सहिया, कुटिल जगत की आसी। दुख अपमान कष्ट सब सहिया, कुटिल जगत की आसी। मीरा कहे प्रभु गिरधर नागर, मीरा कहे प्रभु गिरधर नागर, मीरा कहे प्रभु मीरा कहे प्रभु, मीरा कहे प्रभु गिरिधर नागर, गिरिधर नागर, गिरिधर नागर, गिरिधर नागर। मीरा कहे प्रभु गिरिधर नागर, मीरा मीरा गिरिधर नागर, गिरिधर नागर, गिरिधर नागर, गिरिधर नागर। मीरा कहे प्रभु गिरधर नागर, काको जगत की आसी। जन्म जन्म की दासी, मैं हरि चरण की दासी। आओ प्रीतम सुंदर निरूपम, आओ प्रीतम सुंदर निरूपम, अंतर हो उदासी। आओ प्रीतम सुंदर निरूपम, अंतर हो उदासी। मानत नहीं मन धीरज मोहन, तड़पत निस दिन दासी। मानत नहीं मन पतनी सदिन राशि सांवरिया मोहनिया नागरिया मेरो बिया सांवरिया मोहनिया नागरिया मेरो बिया प्रभु आओ आओ जी प्रभु आओ 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 जी प्रभु आओ
That was amazing, right? Can we have another round of applause for Priya? We would now like to invite Harshit Agarwal, AI and new media artist, for an immersive art demonstration with a unique fusion of human imagination and digital possibilities.
Hello. 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 Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So, incredibly excited to be here. And congratulations and thank you for such a wonderful event that we're having. But the only point I do have is why do I have to go after Priya ma'am? Like it's absolutely impossible to follow up such an incredibly beautiful act. But really excited to speak with all of you about my journey. About art, technology, culture, and this question that I often ponder over, like, do wires dream of veins, right? So let's get started. Let's get started. Yeah. Okay. So just to give a bit of context of where I come from. So I started by going through some technology schools, learning about technology, but then I really started wondering, all this optimization and solving sort of getting things to work within milliseconds, all of that is cool. But since we're living with technology 24/7 now, we have to start thinking of a more poetic relationship with technology, right? And so what I started doing is doing art residencies post sort of my graduate studies and really immersing myself in the art space and started to form this relationship between technology and art. And also, I work with Adobe in terms of thinking of how to democratize the use of technology for creative expression. And all of this I do with this sort of lens of what you call the post-human thinking, right? And I really do feel that we are sort of, that is the contemporary reality of our times. Sort of, we are living in this space where it's almost impossible to talk of humans and machines or humans and technology separately. We're symbionts in the true sense of the word. None of us sort of can spend a day without our phones, right? It's incredibly tough. And therefore, it becomes all the more important. Like if all our actions are mediated through technology, us finding love, be it sort of right swiping everyone or left swiping, whichever way. But all of that, all of these relations are being formed through the medium of technology today, right? And so it becomes really important to sort of start building these poetic partnerships with this device. And I do that through engagement with these sort of three large hats of making art, making play experiences where you can come together and really sort of leave the heaviness of technology aside and really engage from a play first entry point and tool making to sort of spread democratization of the use of technology for creative expression. Um, and technology and art have always been intertwined. It's not something really new, and we're sitting in the Museum of Art and Photography, right? So when photography came about for the first time, a lot of artists sort of would have possibly thought, because till then, the role of art in some ways was, or the responsibility of an artist was to try and mimic reality to the best extent possible, right? And suddenly you had this explosion of reinterpretation of reality, right? You're almost liberated as artists to do interpret realities in all kinds of new and interesting ways. And photography itself became an art form, right? So I see that as a parallel happening in some ways with the use of machine learning AI today, and some of it we'll speak of later also. So yeah, this is what got me excited about this journey. Can I start looking at technology from this sort of more artistic, poetic sense? So this is one of the early projects that I did. So I've been dabbling in this space for around a decade now. And this project called the Flying Pantograph, where around 2014-15, there was a lot of conversation around drones and surveillance through drones, etc. So I started looking at, okay, I am sort of bound by this physical body that I have. Are there ways in which I can break free from it using these technological entities, right? So what if a drone could become this um, extended arm in some sense for me to be able to draw and express at a remote off location, right? And there's also an interesting relation that you form with this drone, because the drone is sort of drawing this, trying to mimic your hand actions and draw this at sort of a remote canvas, but there's also friction involved, etc. So you almost have to over time form this sort of dance with the drone in some ways to try and get the aesthetics of the drone and then work together to create something meaningful. And so this was a lot of other projects around thinking of physical augmentation, but I also want to jump into sort of AI-based artwork that I've been dabbling in for some years now. And just before I begin showing some of those artworks, a very quick like overview of AI, right? So AI is powered by this thing called neural networks, which is essentially an attempt at mimicking how the neural networks of our brain work. And the idea is to sort of feed in a lot of data to the machine and ask it to start forming patterns and start recognizing things within that patterns, right? So you don't explicitly say that a cat has four legs, whatever, or cats are very cute. You don't tell it that, but it tries to learn that on its own. And once it's learned that, what's very interesting here, what starts to happen is sort of this back and forth between perception and creation, right? Like once you've started learning about the world in general, if you were to sort of broadly speaking reverse that process, you would start creating new things, right? And this is pretty much how machine learning or AI powered visual creation works. So this was around 2014-15 that I started sort of working on this project called Tandem, one of my early works with AI art, which was a simple drawing system where you drew something, but you let the machine sort of reimagine what your drawings were. And suddenly the machine sort of elevated from this role of just, smoothing my circles because I can't draw good circles, but it elevated from that to sort of actually having an imaginative say in the work that I'm doing. So if I drew something like this, what most of us would think as a ink feather, sort of a feather of a writing pen dipped in an ink bottle, but the machine sort of imagined that as a bird, right? And sort of more interesting outputs, like a lot of us would think of this as leafless trees in a deserted land, but the machine, and because it had been trained on a lot of dog species, sort of reinterpreted that as these dogs with large ears. So in action, this is how that system sort of looks like, where you start doodling something, but then you're sort of letting the machine add sort of some creative element on top of that. So it's sort of within a few seconds reinterprets your drawing in all these interesting ways, and it becomes a very playful experience, right, where you don't know what's going to come out. So you're constantly sort of trying to have this back and forth with the machine. So and yeah, one thing very interesting that I wanted to point out, this piece actually is now part of a permanent collection of the world's biggest computer science museum, which was very interesting for me because the motivation for me was an artistic motivation, but this really coming together of the arts and sciences is something that, yeah, we simply can't like ignore these days. And so also a lot of times when we speak of AI, technology and art, there's always this sort of assumption that it is non-material in some ways, it is purely sort of in this digital realm. But there is an inherent materiality to making art with machine learning. And it is in that materiality, working with that materiality, that the craft of an AI artist lies, right? So in some ways, to draw a loose analogy, um, artists work with paint as materials and use paint brushes as the tools to manipulate that material. In the same way, data is the material that I would work with and use algorithms to manipulate data in certain ways that I want to create a certain outcome. And a project that sort of demonstrates this quite nicely is one called Strange Genders, where the underlying question that I was working with is around how do people in India perceive gender visually, right? And the other thing that I want to point out before I speak about this project is these new kinds of artworks that AI now enables, where you're able to suddenly think of artworks from a data perspective, like how do we collectively think of a certain concept, and other sort of new art forms that I'll show later. So what we did for this project was sort of went around Bangalore and asked people, all kinds of people, to draw their visual representation of a standing male form and a standing female form. And this data set itself, I think, is really beautiful. So this is the standing female figures, standing male figures, and just sort of this diversity of representation. And then pandemic hit, and then we sort of moved this data collection online to Amazon Mechanical Turk, which itself was an interesting process to sort of think of data collection more holistically. So once we did this, what I did was take this data set and train an AI system to sort of recreate images based on its learning from this data set. So this is just a sample representation of AI generated outputs from that data. And what we did also parallelly is train what is called a classifier to sort of take and learn what female and male figures look like, and then based on the AI output, sort of give them a classification score of what percentage female the AI thinks that particular AI generated output is, and then sort of spread them in the circular sort of form where the central figure became 100% female form, and the outermost radius is 0% female. And yeah, this is just some exhibition snapshots of that work. I'm going really fast because I have 10 minutes left and I have a lot to cover. But so the next project that I want to talk about is the anatomy lesson of Dr. Algorithm, very clearly. Okay. Okay, the next artwork that I want to talk about is the anatomy lesson of Dr. Algorithm, very clearly inspired from one of Rembrandt's early paintings called the anatomy lesson of Dr. Talp. Fun fact, both of us were 26 when we did this work. But I think there is some epiphany that happens when you're 26. But what was happening here with Dr. Talp was he was with Rembrandt when he created this work was this sort of troubled fascination with medical science at that point, right? Where suddenly people were cutting open other people to treat them. And there is a very similar troubled fascination with AI machine learning data that we're having today, right? Where we don't know how much of humanity, so to say, to expose the machines with, and how much do they learn out of that. And so I sort of flipped that equation to say, when we talk of humans, we have sort of this meta level of speaking. When we speak of machines, we often speak of it as nuts and bolts and wires, and do wires dream of veins, right? So what if we showed the machine these very like raw forms of the human body? So what I did is take about 60,000 images, sat painfully through surgical dissection videos to collect these, and then train an AI system to sort of reinterpret the insides of the human body. And this is what it saw, the raw gore sort of materiality of the human. And this was call out to sort of NatureMod because this is part of one of the first AI art shows in a contemporary gallery internationally. So for them to have sort of hosted this. And the next project that I want to speak of is Masked Reality, and this probably also talks about these new forms of artistic expressions and encounters that are possible, right? Where this is actually an interactive work where uh, audience that is standing in front, and pardon my acting skills, but audience that is standing in front of a camera device, their face structure sort of gets recognized, and that face structure is reinterpreted as these Thayyam and Kathakali dance forms by being trained on the face painting rituals of these very rich dance forms, right? And we're sort of talking about cultural assets and cultural inclusivity. And in that sense, like sort of taking this face recognition technology, which otherwise sort of is used to carry out predictive policing and sort of spread bias further in societies. Can we sort of take that same technology, reinterpret it for artistic sort of encounters where there's a more personal experience that you have with an art form, right? And there's also an underlying layer of sort of social commentary within this work because um, how this work is showed is through you forming both these identities parallelly. So you see yourself both as a Thayyam and a Kathakali performer simultaneously, and sort of the golden border around the Kathakali performance is deliberate to make the work self-conscious in sort of the social narratives that are held against these two dance forms, right? One being performed by a more tribal section of the society, and the other probably reserved for a more Nambudari Brahmin kind of setting, which I won't delve into deeper here. To move on to the next project, which is called Authorize. And this is actually also an early work with AI that I did, where I was really questioning sort of the idea of agency when you're working with technology and machine learning. So this is a writing system where you start writing on a piece of paper. And what happens is after a few seconds, the pen surprisingly, like the nib of the pen surprisingly retracts, and then you're sort of left at the mercy of the machine. So you just hold the pen, and the machine moves your hand around to complete the writing. So how this works, to give away the magic, there's actually a magnetic system under the table that attracts the tip of your pen and moves your hand around. But what's also happening is the machine is sort of trained on a large collection of books from Project Gutenberg, which is an online collection of all kinds of books. So this one is particularly trained on books of poetry and philosophy, and also a data set of human handwriting. So there is sort of this removal of agency in some sense that happens midway through this process, right? But what's interesting is whenever I show this work, I ask people, who does this piece of writing belong to? This is what the outputs look like. So something like the person started writing freedom of man is a myth, who the machine sort of continues, who is a moral and nice person of the state to say the truth. So it's sort of meta. I mean, you can read into it in ways you imagine. But the interesting thing is, yeah, when I ask people like, who does this piece of paper writing belong to, right? Oftentimes the answer is, yeah, it's my work. Whereas, I mean, for most of the interaction, you were simply holding a pen, right? There was this reversal of who is the robotic arm and who is the human in this actual interaction. So there is this deep-rooted sense of humans being at the center of every interaction. And I think this was a deliberate attempt to sort of physically embody this idea of an AI influencing your actions this strongly, so that there is probably sort of that thinking that, there is a departure from this innate centralness of humans in every interaction with machines. And that realization, once that starts to kick in, you become more deliberate in the ways you interact with machines and technology. Um, and yeah, this was one of the manifestations of that work, which was part of this show that I did, Existential, which was also India's first solo show of AI art at Imami Gallery, curated by Maina Mukherjee, who's a wonderful curator, probably one of the few Indian curators working very deeply with technology, and been a privilege to work with her over the years. So just to continue sort of this journey Some of the works, yeah, much more critical in their approach, but some more just aesthetically sort of in the inquiries about something like, okay, I'm working with AI as a material, the algorithms. Can I teach it the distinction between painterly and compositional, right? So here what I do is take still life paintings, but also expose the machine in varying ways of this sort of zoomed in portions and zoomed out portion, and then sort of create the system to like sort of yeah, oscillate between the two in some way. So this is a continuously looping video that sort of just goes from the compositional to the painterly and back. So it's sort of, yeah, really trying to push aesthetics also with this new sort of craft form of machine learning art. Something that actually Sanjoy referred to earlier, and this project is very much based on that. It's about sort of the idea of data colonization. And it's a virtual reality work where uh, like Sanjay said, right? Like we're in this space today where we're constantly bombarded with advertisements, which have become sort of the revenue model for practicing this sort of new age colonization, right? That's the revenue model. And so what I did here is take a poppy plantation land. So this is a virtual poppy plantation land, and poppy fields, as we all know, were one of the ways in which the British earned their revenue for carrying out colonization. So here, once you wear these head glasses, you land into this land, and everything in this space is actually made up of advertisement videos, and these are the top 10 advertisement videos on which most money was spent on Facebook over the last 2 years. So you're sort of in this space, but also sort of thinking of and looking only at these ads which you're constantly bombarded by. And it's also sort of a conversation on the ecological becoming the digital in some ways. Yeah, this is a project called The Past is Tense, and very much sort of the idea of how AI can, and we were speaking of this earlier today also, how AI can create visuals that sort of retell stories in very different ways, right? In all ways that you want to imagine. And yeah, this is deliberately kept a little abstract, but sort of there are ways in which you can sort of really push AIs to create works that start creating a sense of multiple versions of reality in some ways, right? And this other work, which is very recent, done earlier this year, called The Garden of Digital Delights, thinking of sort of the idea of gardens as a space for identity building and delight, which was earlier, but sort of the gardens of delight today being sort of these digital spaces. So this is actually manifested in this large sort of cuboidal sculpture piece, and it's a 4-minute video which I won't play and bore you all with right now, but you guys can check it out later maybe. And very quickly moving to also sort of some of the play aspects of work, right? So this is the project we were referring to earlier with Tasveer Ghar. This is a beautiful, beautiful collection of Matchbox label artwork that I had the privilege of working with. Tasveer Ghar has collected this, and this project is not yet live, but very soon going to become live. But I'll show a quick little video of how this game has been done. So it sort of through this collection, created this interactive work, which is going to sit online, which is a little game where you go on this collector's journey, right? So really working with the collectors themselves and learning their process, and then trying to see ways in which we can sort of respectfully bring that experience into a digital space. So you have these different categories of Matchbox labels, and you basically go through these bazaars in India where you open up a little quiz as you're playing this, and you use that as an opportunity to learn a bit about the Matchbox labels, but then ultimately also form your collection, your own collection of Matchbox labels, which ultimately turn into these custom artworks. So again, taking that base form and that base aesthetic, but reimagining them, some of their aspects through machine learning to create sort of these custom artworks that you get at the end. And very interesting stories that I learned through the project, right? Like if you notice the spelling of guitar, like because of the copyright issues back in those days, which were much more simpler in nature, like you originally had a guitar label, but then someone saw that, that artwork, I mean, this is the AI created artwork, but the original artwork is also very interesting. So they're like, we want to keep this, but we can't like directly keep this, so let's just respell guitar, right? So really fascinating to explore sort of these stories hidden in cultural artifacts. And And this very new project, this is also with Google Arts and Culture, working with a Chutki artist to sort of work with them. And it's really interesting, this conversation to have, because I'm trying to now explain to the artists that, there's this face mapping technology and this is going to happen. And they're like, but I directly draw on faces. Like, how do you expect me to draw on paper or something, right? So just really being mindful of that conversation that you're having and trying to have this back and forth dialogue with people who are actually sort of the ones who created these cultural artifacts in the first place, right? Okay, so ending with 2-3 slides, which are a little bit philosophical in nature, with all the AI art that's happening around us. So Peter sees the computer, but the machine only creates what humans have taught it to, says Peter. So do you, says Peter's mom, right? And this is an open question. Are we innately creative, or is there something that we're sort of just being proud of without actually knowing a lot? So machines can create these kind of images now. You put in a little prompt and you get an interesting visual outcome. But sort of as earlier also we were discussing the idea of human storytelling, human emotions, and I sort of was thinking of this in this analogy where I feel probably that AI has the same potential to automate creativity as the existence of cars has to automate walking, right? So we have, I think, AI could sort of spread the use of and democratize the creation of images, but there's room for everyone to express themselves in ways they want to, right? And this very interesting Twitter conversation also, when Twitter was still usable, this happened last year. The CTO of OpenAI wrote something like, it may be that today's large neural networks are slightly conscious. And this beautiful reply, I think, which said that in the same sense that it may be a large field of wheat is slightly pasta. Uh, so I think, yeah, this is a good point to sum it up. And this is my time. Thank you.
Hello. Anybody has any questions for? Oh, we'll just have 2 questions in the interest of time.
That's why I kept the presentation long, so I don't have to answer many
You
questions.
can choose who
but,
you
uh,
want to.
No, anyone, and we can continue the conversation later also. But yeah.
Yeah, we can just aggregate the questions. Yeah.
Hello. Huh. Uh, Excuse me, I can't see the. Sorry. Yeah. Hi. My name is Gaurav, and I had a question for you. When you go through this process of a completely new art piece, right? Um, where do you get most of your data sets from? Is there a central repository or something like that, or is it all painstakingly like curated by you?
Trust me, that's a $1 billion question. And I think that's the core problem that we have to try and solve. How do we ensure that we have representative data of all kinds of art forms? So often, yeah, I work, like I've shown, sort of either collect data for the Strange Genders project, for example, going to people, asking them to draw. Um, and for the Kathakali project, like working with the Chutki artists to get them to sort of work with them and make data sets. So often that is the route, like how can I collect data from the source itself? And sometimes it is sort of openly available data, CC0 license data that I work with. So different forms that are based on different projects, whatever the requirements are.
Thanks.
Hi, the artwork is really touching, but beyond that, I'm really impressed by the engineering behind most of the artworks as well, like Tandem in 2015, or the like curious about the precision in your handwriting tool as well, and also the the characters in the matchboxes as well. They are readable, so I was mostly curious about the engineering that went behind all these projects.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it is sort of working with neural network models and sort of retraining them in my own ways, writing custom code for interaction, interactivity. So yeah, I mean, there are different ways in which all of these come together. Often it's chaining of different algorithms, etc. The Matchbox works, the readability. So in that, the visual artifact is what is machine learning created, and the body of it is taken from the collection. So if that was a point of confusion. But yeah, generally it's like just working, building custom models, etc. Yeah.
Okay, we can have one last question. It's our map person
Okay.
who has the question.
For it. Yeah, it's a very nice presentation. Thank you.
Say the good words on the mic.
Yeah, of course. We have to. So my question is like how Jeremy Bentham have actually influenced the idea of panopticon, and like we have this big data of panopticon all around us with these algorithms and all. So how do you navigate this ethical implication of using algorithm influenced by your projects and also by the human biases we have? So how do you navigate this kind of challenges?
So I think one thing is very important to sort of be very mindful of the data you're working with, so you know the data inside out, to make sure that you work through the biases in the data set. Because as I say, sort of in AI machine learning language, like garbage in, garbage out, right? So it and also through sort of the algorithmic processes, can you treat the data in a certain way that eradicates some of those biases that might be there? So I think it's a combination of the two, but being really mindful of the entire process, and that's why I say it's almost a craft to work with this material, this new material. Yeah.
That's true. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harshit. We're just going to play a video and then continue with the next set. That was an amazing presentation by Harshit. Thanks. We can just give him a round of applause for him. Yeah. So we're just going to set up the stage while I finish my spiel. May I please welcome on stage Asad Lalji, SVP SR Group, CEO Avid Learning, curator Royal Opera House, Mumbai, and member of FICCI Arts and Culture Committee for our next panel discussion, Digital Transformation of Culture, exploring AI's role that looks at the potential impact of artificial intelligence on various aspects of culture, including creation, preservation, access, and experience, focusing on harnessing artificial intelligence to nurture an inclusive cultural sector.
So, needless to say, that's an extremely tough act to follow. Originally, when we slotted Harshit there, we thought, maybe we'll help people recover from their food coma after lunch. But this has gone, I think you're on overdrive right now. But I'm just going to do, before I invite my panel in, I just wanted to do some level setting and no cutting our time. She was threatening to cut my panel time. Harshit? No. All right. And this would work? Okay. Is it working or not? Okay. Earlier this year, the government here in Karnataka announced using artificial intelligence to manage traffic signals by adopting seamless signaling to deal with Bangaluru's traffic congestion. The Supreme Court's use of artificial intelligence software by Teres, Bangalore based startup, created history with live transcription hearings, releasing them the same day. A think tank, Center for the Study of Science and Technology and Policy, is studying AI's potential for strengthening climate action in India with a focus on water and transport management. These are just a few handful examples of Bengaluru's tech forward approach and early adoption of AI among different facets of life. Again, we are in the tech capital of the country. And to stay on point, these images were created on Dali, but they pale in comparison to Harshit. So I'm just bear with me here. Um, with technological advancements in variety of sectors so far ahead, can art be far left behind? And again, Harshit stole my thunder again there, and the answer is an emphatic no. Our conference partner and this wonderful venue, MAP, has collaborated with Microsoft AI. Interwoven is an AI powered digital platform that expands upon MAP's textile collection using AI technology to seek out similar objects around the world. In addition, MAP and Accenture Labs had collaborated to present India's first conversational digital persona of celebrated artist MF Hussain through 3D holographs. And I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more about what they're doing in their walkthrough in the evening. As showcased in the Future Fantastic Festival, directed by Kamya Ramchandran, India's first tech and art festival, conveyed the climate emergency message through AI and art. We have the pleasure of having Kamya on our panel today, and this festival was also supported by British Council, and we'll be hearing from Jonathan later on. Art and technology has been crossing paths since the time of Leonardo da Vinci. In the 60s, the first instance of integrating the visual arts and technology dates back when a team of scientists paired with scientists from Bell Laboratories, paired with artists of their time to create EAT, Experiments in Art and Technology. It was a collective to promote collaboration between art and new technology using innovations of that era. Today, the boundaries between art and technology are becoming even more hazier. AI development is bringing about revolutions and altering the way we produce, appreciate, and engage with art. Earlier, we referenced to Paul McCartney recently announced that thanks to AI, the final new Beatles record has been finished and will be released later this year, extracting John Lennon's voice from an old demo, completing a decades old album. In September last year, game designer Jason Allen sparked a controversy after submitting an image created on AI to the Colorado State Fair's Fine Arts competition, winning the first prize. In, uh, in yeah, Glenn Marshall, an AI artist, used OpenAI Clip to create The Crow, an AI film which was made and which won the jury award at the Cannes Short Film Festival last year. But we've only begun to scratch the surface of how generative AI has enormous potential, but with great power comes great responsibilities. Lately, we've been reading and hearing about intellectual properties, copyright infringements. When the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, quits Google to speak out openly about his worries about technology, it raises a lot of eyebrows world over. However, we know that AI is here to stay and it's only going to get smarter, so we need to embrace it responsibly for augmenting human intelligence and not replacing it to work towards complex global challenges. This brings me to our discussion that we've been waiting for, digital transformation of culture, exploring AI's role. I would now like to invite our panelists who, with their innovative approaches and forward-thinking vision, will provide a more comprehensive picture of AI's potential in shaping and reshaping culture. Please welcome, and just guys come up and take your seats from there to here. Um, so everyone knows where they're sitting. Indian sci-fi creator, screenwriter, and VP development, Bang Bang Media Corp, Pratik Arora. Director, Infosys Foundation, Shruti Khurana. Louder, yeah, come on. Founder, director, Be Fantastic in Kamya Ramchandran. Woo! Managing Partner India, Celesta Capital, Sudhir Rao. Founder, Makers Legal, Pankuri Upadhyay.
Hello. Can you hear me now? Good. If anyone remembers that commercial. Sorry guys, we have planned for each of our panelists to be presenting a couple of slides. Just in the interest of space and time, we're not doing that. But I'm going to ask them to still talk about their work. So in terms of your current work practice, how do you think AI and other emerging technologies are changing the way we create, experience, and understand culture? Share a few relevant examples, especially some of us are not from Bangalore for the purposes of our audience. And I'm going to start with Prateek. You've been using AI image making to explore the creation of new fictional worlds and altered realities. How do you approach the process of using AI as a tool, and share some of the insights in your creative journey? And I'm going to encourage everyone to just keep this a little short so we can go through multiple rounds.
Yeah, thanks, Asad. Just quick context. I've been using AI images and now video for about the past year to create visual storytelling. I don't know the word for it yet. I'm still finding my way around it, but primarily in the genres of science fiction and horror. I wish I had some images to show you. Maybe some of you have seen it online. I started doing this on Instagram, which is really not like a great place to find out, I guess, but I work in entertainment in Mumbai. Sorry, am I audible? So the context is that I work as a producer in entertainment in Mumbai. So been a lifelong fan of science fiction. Didn't really see a lot of it happening in India, which was kind of absurd to me because as a country, we're obsessed with science and technology education. And life in India really is really shaped by technology right now. So to have no popular fiction addressing that at scale was strange to me. And having worked in entertainment in Bombay, it wasn't really set up to sort of develop new ideas. It's kind of, we know sort of Bollywood has had a challenge with bringing newer ideas, newer aesthetics into the fold. So when AI imaging sort of emerged with DALL-E 2, I think was what I saw first, and then Midjourney, I saw a way to kind of express some of those stories just visually. I've been a writer for a long time, and science fiction again is what I prefer. So it was just that, is an exploration of new kinds of stories online on Instagram. Some of that kind of got some traction, went a little viral. Suddenly there was all this attention, and I'm just trying to make sense of it right now.
Just mention the India Art Fair project.
Yeah, so my context is very like pop culture. Like the art side of things happened almost accidentally. I exhibited at Art Fair. It was interesting. There wasn't as much hate as I expected because there's a lot of charged conversation around AI right now. But it was great to kind of look at your own work from that lens. And yeah, I think hard to kind of give you context without the images. But yeah, the hope now is to let this kind of snowball into an alternative pop culture thing, like how YouTube came in and kind of disrupted Bollywood a little bit. I think that's healthy for overall like culture as a whole. So what I'm seeing is that we're at the early stage of a new kind of wave of creators who use primarily AI to tell new kinds of stories in new genres.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Shruti, the Infosys Foundation does some really path-breaking work leveraging tech for good. Rural development is one of the disciplines of CSR's operations and activities. And, when we spoke, and we've heard this today also, tech is only a tool, right? And Infosys' tool, Springboard, has been doing some amazing work. Could you just share some of the ongoing or upcoming initiatives where technology is being leveraged to support your foundation's objectives?
So let me backtrack a little bit before we get into arts. Just to give a context about Infosys Foundation, we reached around 2 million plus people just the last year. We've covered all 28 states of India. And we have a gamut of areas that we work in, for instance, arts and culture, healthcare, education, women empowerment, and sustainability being huge ones as well. So very interestingly, I think none of these areas actually work in silos, even though as organizations we tend to do that. For instance, there's a lot of education that goes into art and vice versa as well. So that being said, you mentioned Springboard. So what Springboard is it's a free online platform. It's a guided training in tech, non-tech, and the goal is to reskill the unemployed and address their concerns to get jobs. So it's a very different, different area that we come from. So where we try and get the concept of art and culture right to the masses. We also support something called Sahapedia, which is, in a way, think of it as a mini wiki of arts and culture, local heritage. It's also a forum for advocacy. It provides dynamic access to arts and culture content. We've also supported very sweet organizations. There's one called Anahad Foundation. What it does is it uses tech to sort of eliminate the middlemen so that we can provide rural artists wherever they are, whichever remote location of India, access to livelihood. So we come from a very different perspective of trying to actually reach out directly to the underprivileged in the space of arts and culture.
Sure. I'm going to come back to some of the other verticals you mentioned. I'm going to go on to Kamya. I mean, your curatorial philosophy is about building collaborative communities to help address today's big challenges. You know, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned the gap between the makers and the creators, and there's a lot of learning and self-learning. Where do you see artificial intelligence fitting, especially in shaping the future of artistic expression and cultural experiences? And also, please talk about the Future Fantastic show.
Hello? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Yeah, so we have just come off of doing one of our largest marquee festivals, trying to explore AI as a form of expression, as a form of making, with a whole host of artists that we've worked with over the last 3 years. And we decided to make this really large festival moment out of it because a lot of hard work went into convening these communities of artists and technologists globally. We had Indian artist technologists, we had folks from the UK, thanks to the British Council, from Germany, thanks to the Goethe Institute, and mentors from Switzerland, thanks to the Swiss Arts Council as well. So I think what we learned in these mostly Zoom rooms through COVID, where artists were encountering AI. Harshit was a mentor in one of our programs. I'd say that there are very few people like Harshit around, where there's a single body that holds the art and the technology within it. And so in the lack of that kind of type within our country, it's really interesting to have these collaborative communities where different disciplines are coming together and putting their heads towards interesting storytelling like Pratik was saying. So I think, where does this go? Where does art and tech potentially play a role? Is immersive, interactive, experiential storytelling formats. And if culture is that collection of meaning making, I think we need to, that's what we're trying to do here. Meaning making with AI as a contemporary tool for storytelling.
Right. And I'm going to come to the whole climate change part in my next round. So there, you're a managing partner India for Celesta Capital, which has doubled its investment in India over the last 10 years. Now, yesterday I was reading about VC funding in tech companies. Our will contract for 2023 and 24. In fact, it fell 18% in the second quarter this year. But AI has been the bright spot of funding for the second quarter of 2023. I mean, we have a lot of very bright people here, all, we have the intellectual capital out here, but what everyone is lacking is the financial capital. So being the money man, put that hat on for now. How do you identify and evaluate AI-driven startups that have the potential to impact and transform? You've been a player in this field for a long time, so share some of those insights.
I think we have the sort of, at our fund, we invest more much earlier. With everybody's discussing AI and everybody can use the word AI very quickly now. We,
Just closer.
yeah. So if I go back, we have the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics that was built in Bangalore about 40 years ago. So just to put it in perspective, our venture partner, Dr. Paul Raj, set that up. So we have a certain amount of sort of deeper, earlier stage. If I look at AI, and our fund basically looks towards mass adoption of various applications that are emerging. But we come sort of -7, -5 years. And as a fund, we look for such technologies that are required to support mass adoption, right? So if, for example, everybody on a phone wanted to now also have access to the visual side of their mobility, that's when the camera was required on the phone. So we had to think about how do you actually port a camera on, and therefore all of the technologies that permit a camera of the kinds that we use today on phones was thought through, about 20 years ago. For AI, we realized that AI will get starting to get adopted by Prateek or Harshit. They're going to be users, and we're going to be consumers as well. And therefore, the infrastructure that's required for actually generative or creating these generative forms needed a shift. So about 7 years ago, we started to invest more on the semiconductor technology, the metal that actually you have to build. And we were very fortunate to find great teams that built the new sets of chipsets. So which means the CPU of Intel or the GPU of NVIDIA is not good enough for the AI that we're expecting to actually consume. And I think ChatGPT is today common parlance. You're using DALL-E already to just show my one PowerPoint slide. And that requires incredible amount of infrastructure at the back end. So our funds actually go into infrastructure building, into a deeper sort of sense for what do you need to put in. And if you look at then verticalized usage, we will then again look at mass adoption. So for example, digital advertising is at a completely different stage of life today versus, let's say, the way we saw print advertising on a Times of India or the Indian Express there are no ads in that, but I read the Express. And to be able to render to each community, each individual, or each segment, and more importantly, to actually do it in context of the culture you're releasing the ad in. When you release a global product like Coca-Cola, what it means in Tamil Nadu is very different from what I would do in Assam, and be very different what we do in Mexico. But that ad has to get released because let's say they're now doing a global launch, and 150 countries are going to receive it. And therefore, we have to think about 150 cultures minimum at a country jurisdiction. Then you want to go down deeper with each community that you want to actually present that communication to needs generative art, but yet not losing what you want to do with the ad. So our investments have been in this sort of zone.
Sure. Thank you for that. I'm going to talk to you about, I was reading an article about the African American community, and they were actually angry because there's not enough data, and how they are represented through machines is very different, especially from the skin tone perspective. Pankori, the Comptroller of and Auditor General of India has recently outlined the responsible AI as one of the main thrusts for deliberation under the India presidency. I was at a conference last week in Indiana, and the pulse there is companies are not committing to an AI strategy because they want to know what the government policy is going to be. This week in the headlines was UK top universities reached an agreement on how to deal with generative AI. America's first law regarding AI-biased hiring has taken into effect. So can you familiarize us with the legal infrastructure for creators in India and how it's evolving and how's the landscape changed? Maybe in the last 3 months also, because it's changing that fast.
Yeah, there is a lot happening. Is this good? Yeah. Okay. So I think there's a lot of specifics that I can get into when covering the legal landscape, but just to give a broad outlook of what's happening internationally, like Asad said, I think EU is one of the first, big regions that have kind of addressed AI in the form of an AI Act, which I feel is kind of going to guide a lot of the regulations in other parts of the world, especially India. Um, what they've done is that they've taken a risk-based approach to AI systems, AI platforms. So use cases which pose higher risk to public safety, data will be regulated much more severely than the rest. In India, I think the government has kind of indicated that there is no intent to kind of have a specific AI act or one law that will kind of regulate AI. So, but the government has been very proactive in terms of setting up a lot of committees, think tanks at different industry levels. The government institutions like RBI have, in their respective sectors, kind of released some guidelines as to, for example, RBI has mandated the companies to disclose what kind of AI systems are being used within their functioning. And also, I think the big, you know, um, sort of the basically the Digital India Act is where I think we're going to get a lot of answers to a lot of the, issues that we're sort of uncertain about when it comes to AI. Similarly, the data protection bill is expected. There's been a lot of delay in the passing of these regulations. I think the government is still kind of in dialogue with stakeholders, but a lot of answers will come from there once these laws are kind of formalized. You also want me to talk a bit about like for the creative.
Yeah, sure. But
aspect?
do you have any timeline for when this would happen? Because this can go on for.
I mean, just yesterday, I think the minister said that because of some personal commitments, the Digital Act had been postponed again for the month. So, it's hard to kind of, for me to give a timeline, especially. But hopefully this calendar year.
And the creative industries?
Yeah, so I think from a creative perspective, what is going to happen is that we're going to see, the adaptation of existing laws to the concepts of AI. And the use cases. For example, all the intellectual property laws, Copyright Act, your Contract Act, these are going to have to be interpreted, for all of these AI use cases. And a lot of our work at Making People is kind of about that for the last, even before. I think AI, the way the term is being used so commonly now, we're kind of having this whole discussion about it today. There's something known as the AI effect, which basically, means that AI has been around us for a while now. Like, it's been around 10, 15 years that we have it on our phones, but suddenly this term is kind of, being used so commonly. The minute it becomes part of our daily lives, we stop calling it artificial intelligence. It just becomes an app or like, your Uber navigation system. That is AI also. So for us, we've been kind of, trying to answer questions, especially from a legal perspective, for about 4 or 5 years now. We set up a sort of informal think tank at Makers Legal, with various, a very diverse set of people who are geekily into technology and law and art. And we were kind of well prepared for this day. I think at the time we called it Future Law Think Tank, but now the future's here. And we were sort of prepped for some of it in terms of, the basic philosophical, consequences of, this advancement of AI legally. But I think now in terms of with our clients, what's changed is we have to now advise them on the actual applications of it and all the issues that basically a lot of our clients are facing. Yeah, that's
Come back to it. Thank you for that. I think I'm going back to you, you obviously your bang bang, looking at the film business, and I mentioned Glenn Marshall's film, an AI film, and I stumbled upon this Runaway AI festival when I was in New York. So where does the Indian film fraternity and the filmmakers stand within the whole AI film things? I mean, you're from Bombay, which is Bollywood largest, for almost one of the largest film industries in the world, contributing to a lot of money. To quote some of the FICCI stats, 15.6 billion to India's media and entertainment industry. Do we have representation of AI Indian films and festivals? And what are some of the? This is obviously geared towards policy recommendations. So, is there anything that one can work towards so that India is represented? Because anytime you watch anything on any of the OTT, and you anyway wait till the end of the film credits, you'll see a lot of Indian names out there. So people are working in this, but are we doing it officially or getting credit?
Yeah. Okay. So I think there are two parts to that. One is what's happening with AI in, let's say, Mumbai, but I think broadly with all the various film industries, Bengaluru's got a great, vibrant film thing. There's Telugu films that are all sort of doing very well. I think I would say that compared to, let's say, the US, where there's a lot stronger negative sentiment, in India, what I'm sensing with sort of practitioners and people in the industry, there's a sense of cautious optimism because we're younger, even though we produce a lot of films, we don't produce so many great films. I mean, the quality is sharp drop off beyond the, let's say, the first 3, 4, 5 films every year. It's also, there's a few structural challenges that our industries have had that kind of seem to be getting solved. So one, we don't have a very strong film school system, right? So we're not having the academic study of film happen at a level where other sort of developed media economies are having it. And that leads to not a lot of there's not a lot of space for original conceptual thinking before you enter into the practice of actually making money. So you're always chasing the lowest common denominator. You're always chasing what you can sell. There's not a lot of space for intellectual growth of the medium. It hasn't been, which has led to various weird resource constraints, especially for new ideas. So just to take the example of what I want to do, science fiction is a big, very profitable genre internationally. So it's kind of amazing that we don't really have a culture around that. And so every time you go and pitch something, and I've done this, I pitched to Netflix in Bombay, there's a chicken and egg thing because there hasn't been a lot of Indian science fiction, no one wants to bankroll it. And because no one's bankrolling it, so it's not happening. And as a result, we haven't really developed a wide body of, let's say, we have with past few years, and Bengaluru's had a role to play, but concept artists, VFX artists, stunts, just aesthetics around newer genres. So AI kind of lets us leapfrog a lot of that. You can now visualize basically anything and what that lets us do is get buy-in for a lot more ambitious ideas earlier in the process. So let's say I want to go to a major producer in any of the various film industries in India, say I'll have this idea for an ambitious superhero movie that I think can do very well and we can get everyone to watch it. So it'll be like, no, I don't know what it'll look like, it's risky, but now you can show them. So that kind of helps with that. Second, the challenge is going to be tremendous because the other problem of not having a very structured film school or like a trade body kind of thing is that there's a lot of unstructured and sort of informal employment in our film industries. Lots of it is kind of somewhat protected by the unions today, but let's say when you're able to generate video, what happens to thousands of lightmen and gaffers who are on set when you don't need them, right? Someone has to think about upskilling those portions of the sort of the workforce because the producers will be fine, the top directors will be fine. So at a policy,
It's yours, Mike. Sorry.
yeah. So at a policy level, I think so various producer guilds and director guilds, but also the government needs to invest in is upskilling and now.
So policy and education and upskilling. And
upskilling of unstructured parts of the film business in the various parts.
I have another thought that I'll come back to that. So Shruti, I'm now going to move away from your Infosys life to your parallel life as an independent and accomplished editor, having worked across fiction, non-fiction, children's lit, with authors like Sudha Murthy or the late President Abdul Kalam. Just could you share some of your thoughts on the impacts and opportunity of AI in literature? I know Sonjoy mentioned the Harry Potter thing in the morning. We had, Abhinav Agarwal, talking about this book, Bridging the AI Gap, which was the first ever book written by AI algorithms. I was at this conference again, and the word in the publishing field is the publishing industry is getting rid of or downsizing their researchers and are using chatbots to do some of the heavy lifting, as we say. So some thoughts on AI and literature.
So I to keep it brief, I'll focus on 2 points. So AI for me at this time, while it has potential to write novels, um, it is in no way yet ready to replace writers. Um, while you can, through the chat GPTs and AI of the world, you can write scenes. There's, for instance, Washington Post has its own in-house AI platform that writes all articles through various data. But the gamut that we currently have in terms of books, the range of it, um, the essence of the book, for instance, you can't really replace, say, the genius of Ayn Rand, right? So there is, I still see it more as an assist than mass market at this time. I think AI has to improve a little bit before we get there, not to say that it won't. But while AI is still being used, and I'll tell you how, it's not yet ready for a full-on rollout. Right now, AI is used in various components to make our lives easier in the publishing world. For instance, right now, it is used most in marketing and distribution. Next, it is used in editorial and production. So yes, it makes the editing job easier in a sense. It's good with content translations, content personalization, which movies you can see are referred to you on Netflix, or the books that are recommended based on previous choice. That's all AI. So it's good at that. And a lot of it is being used for that, the personalization. And then the last bit is sort of the press and the administration. So that's where I stand. Right now, it's an assist. The future, yeah, it's got a ways to go.
Some time back, we done an interesting session online with on AI and poetry with this Israeli poet. It was quite fascinating. Anyway, moving on to Kamya, which question am I going to ask you? Okay, let's go with this one. Leveraging arts for social change, and one of the things, I mean, we also at Avid believe in is creating series that convert change makers into, create people into change makers and catalysts for a greener future. It's our Sustainably Now series that I've invited you to a conference on our Green Earth Symposium. Now, as an advocate of social environmental themes, how do you ensure that AI-driven cultural initiatives not only raises awareness about environmental issues, but also encourages tangible solutions and behavioral changes among your audiences? Your festival was, AI and climate, so.
So I think the mice with which we tried to do this is do new formats of immersive experiential storytelling have a deeper impact? So can culture play a role in transferring the message? So if AI art is a medium and there's a deep message to hit home, how does that work? I think our audience feedback report is just coming back to us, but I do feel like audiences did engage a lot more with the subject and the object of the festival, but also in the exploration and experimentation of makers themselves. Archana, my co-founder and partner, is in the back row there, but we ran a program, Archana Wave, but we ran something that she conceptualized and I have to deliver was a project called RadBots, which in 2023 collected 20 playwrights, historians, artists with the written word to craft personalities which were chatbots based on a previous version of OpenAI's ChatGPT. We worked on GPT-3. And the idea was to pull out marginalized voices through this project. And I think explorations and experiments like this, we need a whole bunch more happening, where artists, creatives work with these ideas and bring something to bear. One of the artists created an autistic 10-year-old as a chatbot. And are you sitting next to her? There you go. I didn't realize that. So Arundhati is there. And Arundhati, we had a chat in Delhi about how your chatbot actually had good effects with children, right? And so there is possibilities, but we need more opportunities for artists to do this kind of work and take it out, right? So one of the other artists within that cohort had made a chatbot on the male sex worker from Mumbai. Now, for somebody like me, I don't have access to understanding the lives of these people. But through a chatbot, if I could begin to empathize or understand the lives of the others, that there's social change, change happening right there.
Wow, fascinating.
Thank you, guys.
I think you should connect yourself with Umeed. They do some wonderful work in autism space. Sudhir, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned the healthcare vertical and specifically reading patients' records. Could you elaborate how these AI-generated tools are more culturally sensitive? But on the flip side, AI is prone to making stuff up and the phenomenon everybody calls hallucinating. And I mean, I do that all the time. So how does one balance, accuracy versus cultural sensitivity, especially in an area like healthcare where it's really serious what the results are coming out?
So I think we've had the fortune of somebody just touching your hand, feel the pulse, and that's great relief. More than actually going and putting your body into an MRI machine. And then over time, we've trusted MRI scans, including this, physical touch. So let me give you an example of one of our investments that we made in India. We have over maybe about 7,000 CT, MRI, and X-ray machines, all connected on our platform. And what that allows us to do is over the last 5 years, we have more than 5 million scans on our repository. So the data which Harshit spoke about, which is, for generating art, you may use a certain database. This is for healthcare. And what is of greatest concern really is patient safety. Now, when we subject ourselves to one single X-ray from one machine or one CT scan that you subject yourself to, you're pretty much getting a report from one machine. But think about it now. When you get a report from us, we have over 300 radiologists who are now augmented by there's a layer of AI on top of the scans that we have in our repository. And we automatically route a particular scan. So if I'm actually taking a knee scan, and I have to now send it to a radiologist who's more proficient in, let's say, women, knees above the age of 60. That scan will go and land up over there. If it's a pediatric knee, or it's a child's knee that had an injury, you probably send that out to somebody else. That happened to be the knee. The next patient that's coming in is actually asking for a brain scan. And therefore, now you have to look at the neuro specialists. So routing it to that individual who's a specialist, but actually driving from our imagery that we have in our repository, we can actually drive the attention span to be in an area that we can almost point out, this is the place where you need to double click on or triple click your time on. And therefore, we're able to turn around a scan in minutes, which otherwise you and I know that we've had, it takes 4 or 5 hours to just go there, hang around, come out, you wait the next day. It's you're already in trouble. So in healthcare, we think AI is going to be playing a very, very significant role. We're actually now, for example, we have a company in tissue engineering, and that allows us to actually construct parts of your liver that will be torn. So we're building pieces actually to use computational capacity to really deliver a higher quality of safety. We're doing this in education as well. And she talked about personalization. We all know when we sit in a room like this in a classroom, as well as class 5, the teacher says something and each of us have, all 40 kids have a completely different understanding of the same subject matter. So what we do now is for 2.5 million children in our country, give them a personalized study plan by the time they come back home. And there's a big loss of translation from, as Priya mentioned, she had the cassette, she didn't have the cassette, then she forgot as soon as she left her guru. And it's exactly what's happening to all children. And they don't even know which homework to do. I've got a weekly test, what should I study? Each of the textbooks are as thick as they are, a bag full of stuff to learn. So how do you drive for that child in their capacity to learn or their understanding or their conceptual understanding of a particular concept. And the questions fly at you from very various dimensions. So to be able to actually route this is highly machinable, machine led. So yeah, so education, health, we're really thinking about each individual one-on-one. We want to be able to use base repositories, but the AI algorithmic view will actually personalize it, and then you'll each get it for your fingerprint in some fashion.
Good to know. Pankuri, when we were talking earlier, we talked about, I think he mentioned cloning, and in my advertising days, we used to do, contracts for art talent and artists, and SAG and all that fun stuff. It was pretty simple.
Yeah.
Now with this whole new level of various mediums and AI,
Yeah.
I mean, how do you ensure that? There's digital rights protection, but also greater accessibility. And how do you ensure that the creative or the talent is fairly paid?
So I think it all comes down to, the contracts in that project. I would say like a big chunk of it is, in the individual sort of projects, the people that you're dealing with, the people that you're giving your rights to. It comes back to those basic concepts and conversations that we've had with or without AI. But in terms of, specific to what's changed with AI is, for example, in terms of the legal challenges, there are two sides to it. One is the the input side of it, and then the output side of it. Um, and the input side is where I think a lot of controversy has happened and a lot of debate about, the data sets, and due to the lack of transparency of, how the data sets have been trained, and uh, artists have kind of protested around the world about, their consents were not taken, the images were not licensed for training these data sets. And even though that could have been maybe a conversation that could have been had before at a development stage, it wasn't done. And this has led for lawmakers to really answer this very tricky question about, does that amount to infringement, the training of the data sets for platforms such as Midjourney, for example, or even AI music generation apps. So at an output level, I think, at an input level, I think there was a scope to kind of maybe, monetize this for artists, which has been lost as of now. If copyrighted works by artists are being used for training data sets, is there a possibility to maybe monetize them, do it properly with licenses? That's one aspect of it. And in terms of the output, also there is a lot of, there's a confusion about whether the output itself attracts copyright, who owns it, is it the platform, is it the person giving in the prompts, and whether the output itself is copyrightable at all or not.
It was very complicated, right? Because with SAG, you knew there was a formula one followed,
Correct,
and here there
yeah.
are no benchmarks. So,
Yeah.
do you have an industry association that deals with this? Are there some?
So, for example, we work a lot with clients in film, and for example, what we do with an actor's contract now is that anyway we would try to negotiate the best kind of commercials for them. As an actor, you have to give all rights to your performance likeness to the producer, and that would include any future use, derivative uses,
Your
etc.
persona in the
Yeah,
metaverse
yeah.
also?
And there's a very standard clause called, it's a lengthy one-page clause related to modes, media, and format, and that includes words like universe and anything ever invented and all of that. But now those things that were supposed to be invented aren't here. So what we try to do is like have that conversation already. That with an actor, do you plan to use their performance for creating derivative works? Can you make a different project outside of a film, for example, using the actor's likeness? With SAG in the US, they have already kind of put in provisions for this, where actors have to be paid if that is intended. So at a contract level, we try to do it with our clients. I'm not sure if the unions in Bollywood have yet kind of put this in system, but I know there are talks, and also as lawyers, it helps to kind of push this conversation with producers and the studios. And,
Do these,
yeah.
I can add over here.
Yeah.
So our company actually is now signing contracts for avatars for actors and models and sports stars and singers.
when you signing me?
You know, tell me what avatar you're going to give. But you're actually going to be able to, so this is going on. So even these contracts are going to become much more dynamic because the avatars are all, any case, AI generated, right? I don't need to come shoot nothing.
Mhm.
So now I'm already, an actor, and I can be used as an avatar in a particular advertisement, or let's assume it's merchandising. I mean, we're doing it for that particular purpose. And the contracting is going to go very uniquely. It will probably get linked to what the performance of that avatar was. So, we have a concept of return on ad spend. So depending on the ROAS, if that specific avatar didn't make sense, I can trash it. If that particular shoot was not good, gone. Because it does not necessarily mean if I'm Tom Cruise and I've got one ad in one avatar, that it's going to work in southern Spain. It might work in southern Italy. So what will be released of the ad in southern Italy may generate higher volumes of sales. So these guys are going to actually get an access to a very differentiated form of contract. So I would just.
So
I-
do you
I
have
can guess
but do you have a global versus Indian contract? I mean, you see, we have obviously so many states. So do these contracts differ state-wise, or is it a uniform across India?
No, I mean, they differ to some extent. It can differ even from one production house in Bombay or one studio, one streaming platform. They do differ.
Hmm.
Some are more stringent or more comprehensive than the others. So there is a difference. And obviously, the jurisdictions, the laws in India are different from the US. So they differ in that sense also. But just to add to Sudhir's point, for example, earlier we had to negotiate on behalf of actors. There was this clause of additional shoot days, so where patchwork needs to be done, production house would say that we might get a double to kind of do some of that work for you. And similarly, now there is a possibility of an AI version, an AI avatar finishing that for an actor. But if we're working from the artist side, I think our concern is mostly to kind of limit that usage and get approvals. So the artist should have some say over their image, their performance, their likeness, and also get compensated.
Pratik, do you have anything to add to it since this is your world?
Mike's, yeah, I think, look, that it's all rapidly changing. A lot of that is very applicable to like transition, but it's like sort of talking about a 50% orchestra when electronic music's already been invented, right? The new paradigm will make all of this kind of redundant. There will be the transition of existing industries into newer things, which is why I think most important is that transition not being disruptive, but additive. But honestly, there's going to be generations starting like already, like let's say start last year, who will come into these tools natively and will be telling very complex stories using these tools. They don't worry about this. Like, for example, if I'm using Midjourney, the technology is engineered to not replicate a real person's face. This is going to become a conversation where actor likeness is not going to be a problem because you created, this is a new face that doesn't exist in the real world, and you're already using that in your work. Once you're able to have persistent faces, which is imminent, you're not dealing with actors. It's like you're dealing with digital characters that don't have a legal identity. You created them using these tools. So I think all of this is transition. While that's very important, I think what happens often in India, we kind of get caught up in the minutiae. But I can tell you, like a 18-year-old who's not thinking about building a career in entertainment or media is not thinking about this. He's thinking about how can I kind of have my big PC set up and how can I make my Marvel movie on my desktop. And that's what happened with like digital audio workspaces when they came in, where it moved from, you need like from a 50% orchestra to a band. Now you could make fantastic masterpieces on a laptop, right? I think it's just a new expression. So I think it's really, the focus is how I think about it. That's really the bigger conversation to happen. How do we build conventions around that? Because that's really not happening. And I think that's really the future.
Shruti, I'm just going to go back to your foundation because I have a couple of questions I wanted to cover there. So, one of the focus areas under arts and culture is preservation of the past for the future, which includes working on the Raja Dinkar Kilkar Museum. You're doing the Someshwar Archaeological Archives. So, are there any specific technology-oriented solutions that are being employed to facilitate this preservation, documentation, accessibility of museum artifacts and historical collections?
So there are many. There are no specific ones. So because we, I think, firmly believe that tech has to be a tool, not the reason. So we give our beneficiaries the freedom to deploy their in-house or emerging technologies. So short answer, no. We do things like digitization of 1 lakh antiquities that is going on right now. We're currently in the space of exploring the metaverse, yes, with arts and culture, and how that. So we look at it from a social angle, right? I'm sorry, I know none of you guys are from that necessarily that space, but we look at it how we can get these guys on board, make the reality a little more experiential, and make sure that their products are out there for consumers to have, so they get livelihood. So that's my goal, is to make sure that something comes out of it in a tangible way for people. So those are some of the tech that we are currently exploring.
Thank you. I attended a session last week with this Professor Stefan Heinberg, and it's on state of the art economic development through the lens of paintings. And it was a fascinating experiment where he fed in through AI all these paintings, and AI played the role of an art historian for him. And to kind of comprehend looking at paintings and saying, okay, this time things was the time of the depression, or I'm going back 100 to 300 years. Kamya, what are the most exciting applications of these emerging technologies in the arts and culture that you have come across? I mean, you mentioned one or two examples earlier, which I thought was fascinating, but your presentation, which we've not seen, had many others. So
No, I think even something to build upon your point, which is data. AI is a data monster. And so if we digitized a lot of our cultural assets, how does AI begin to get layered upon that as a framework to make meaning? That's kind of a lot of what's happening with AI. Also, I feel like there's a lot of fear and trepidation around AI. And when people like Hinton and the CEO of OpenAI have their own doubts about the monsters that they are making and unleashing into the world, it makes the rest of us worry a little bit. But I think from, again, going back to the power of the communities of artists and creatives and technologists that we stand upon, I'm kind of almost representing their stories back here. I feel like the trepidation that they came into the room with slowly dissolved. Like Pratik was saying, it's something tameable. It's something that we look at as a tool and try to craft it to the story that we tell. So I still go back to this idea of the huge amounts of data that we collect and create. Everybody is creating copious amounts of data today on a daily basis. And how could we structure AI as that meaning making of this cultural moment in various different ways?
Just in preparation of this panel, I was talking to a couple of people in the field, and there's this Dr. Gunita Singh Bhalla, and she's a friend and an avid collaborator. And she just wrote an article last week in Forbes, and it said to reap the benefits of AI, we must invest in understanding it. And her premise is for pause future public releases of such technologies and spend very large amounts of money trying to invest in it, trying to understand it. I mean, do you think that is a practical solution to, or is this a utopian idea? And she says, in the article, that India is even more vulnerable than the rest of the world. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really feel like we need to start understanding it. There's no other way. There's really no other way. And people who are beginning to understand it do come out feeling a little bit more confident or able to address it a little bit better. So no way out. Have to start understanding it.
All right. So I know I'm being conscious of time, so I'm going to combine a couple of questions for you all guys. And I know we're sick of future gazing and best practices, but I want each of you all to share some thoughts on best practices. I mean, besides the work that you all are doing, and future gazing. Now you don't even need your crystal ball because technology is changing so fast that you can just look at the next few weeks or months and what's coming. So just share some thoughts on what good is happening and what we can expect. And start with you.
In terms of how to use, let's say,
The role of AI and
Okay,
in
so
arts and culture.
I think, I mean, like how I've sort of, it's already rewired my brain, let's say, as someone who wanted to make films, is that basically anything is possible. Like you're literally just confined by your imagination. And I think what we have to do is a lot of unlearning because let's say, even I'm like 32, even anyone who's even in like undergrad media school is still working on what I think is now rapidly obsolete workflow of, hey, let's kind of shoot everything and then take it into another workflow. And by the time they sort of graduate into the market, people will be making movies on their laptops using AI, right? So I think one, you have to forget the current paradigm of cultural production in terms of actually like the production of it, not the ideas of it. And think of this also, I think the big existential crisis this is triggering for a lot of people, including me, for a long time, and it still kind of rears its head again. It's not replacing anything, right? It is a tool. It may look like a different kind of tool, but that's the nature of innovation, right? No two tools are the same. Like to use Harshit's example, if there was paint, like if painters use paint, photographers use light, AI creators using data, but it's really, the data is not intelligent. It's data. You shape it into what it becomes. You make the meaning, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of hesitation with people who are very committed to their craft saying that, hey, am I giving up my agency by using this? Absolutely not. I feel like it's kind of like you're 10xing what you can produce now, especially in India where making art of any kind, especially if it's original or provocative or like politically challenging, is very difficult. This takes a lot of heartburn and headache of the production of something out of the process, right? So it's closer to your own expression. And I think, look, it's also not that it's less human. The other big question, and I think I have to speak on that a little bit, it's not less human. When you're reducing the barrier to, like, let's say, physically producing a work, it's reaching the level of your subconscious expression faster, not later. Like, if I have to take a conceptual photo shoot today, 80% of my brainwidth is going in figuring out set, location, model, actor, etc., etc. The work and the authorship is like, if I have time for it, I'll do it. If I have money for it, I'll do it, right? And even if you set off with a much purer intention, by the time you produce, it becomes an exercise in stakeholder management and not personal expression. All of that now is optional. Right now, if you want to create an image that is personally significant, you don't have to do stakeholder management and production management. You can make the image. So I think it's more, for me, generative art is ironically the most human technology has let us be when it comes to expressing ourselves, and that's how I think of it. Yeah.
I mean, if you really think of photography, when photography came out, the purists hated that. I mean, all new technology, radio, internet, there was always.
Which is funny because, people say technology is not human. No, technology is probably the most human thing there is. We are defined, eras of human evolution are categorized by how we dealt with technology. It's called the Bronze Age for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, we have always progressed with technology. So, for example, when fire was discovered, a lot of people theorize that that's the first time we could get calories concentrated, dense in one time, and that led to a huge leap forward in human cognition. I think something similar is happening right now. Yeah, that's.
So I agree with Pratik on how humans will actually adapt to the whole AI once the fear is like the Y2K, right? And then everyone just kind of went with it in a very basic sense. For me, from the foundation, when we look at, or like Springboard AI solutions, some of the best practices that we try and look at components of it, because this is like an umbrella term, is whether for the mass market, is it going to be scalable? Is it going to be replicable? Is it going to be transferable across industries, right? Whether it's healthcare, education, arts and culture, rural development, whatever it is. And whether it's going to be implementable, again, through government agencies or private or public. So those are the angles and perspectives with which we look at when we try and look at an AI solution. And even with the whole I don't know if you guys are aware of this Ayushman Bharat digital mission and all of that. It's all going to roll up. I mean, IT in and AI and all, it's here to stay. So we can't afford not to think about these as we go forward. So for me, those components are extremely important and the practices that fall under them.
From our perspective, I think pulling together communities that can talk to each other and help each other feel comfortable with this new racy world is where we would like to focus. Communities have found strength in those discussions. And one of the kind of key ideas that emerged from the festival that we had is a manifesto for kind of AI for the creative practices. So 40 people in a workshop put ideas together to bubble up to the top what we should and shouldn't do, how we should and shouldn't use AI. And I think those kinds of moments, opportunities where while we're surrounded by the fear of AI, if we could convene folks from as diverse as this panel for talking moments, that's, I think, a way forward or a best practice that we could adopt and follow and move ahead. But to also say that I think as Indians, we're amazing. This capability of self-learning is just so unbelievably refreshing to be part of. And that's something that I'd like to do.
And also the youths of today, you know, the way they've been educated and grown up with technology in their hands, you know, especially in the creative field, they're a photographer today, tomorrow they're the filmmaker, then they just so seamlessly shift through mediums and just be part of the creative ecosystem, which I think is very rare compared to the older generation. So, yeah. Not the older generation, but just next.
I don't mind. Good okay. You know, if we're using the word AI and A is for artificial, when you go back to the Latin root of artificial, it's actually man was trying to imitate nature. So that's when you're saying, oh, you're trying to imitate nature, and we're all artificial in that pursuit. So firstly, we've been the most artificial people, right? So let's just understand that. Now, we're talking that the machines are artificial. We made these machines. We're going to, ingest them with what we understand. And while I don't think it's just a tool, yes, it can be a beast and it will be a beast. Because it depends on how you really sit in a car and you can drive rash if you so feel like it. As somebody said, if we were all so worried about electricity, we'd all be electrocuted. But it's not like we're not using electrical appliances every single day. So, but do they do more than what we can do ourselves? A, yes. Will they actually represent the collective brain versus the individual brain? I would say yes. If there are applications that require collective brains as an output, then you must use it. In fact, we less rely on just a particular individual insight anymore if we're really seeking insights. We will take anecdote from the individual. And of course, we'll use small data because that's the human side of us. And we can sort of toggle between small data and the theory of big data, right? But I think it's important to understand that the machines, whether it's robotics, whether it is sensors, whether it is compute architecture that's going to arrive, and I'm not future gazing because we're investing in them. Take, for example, if we think that all cars ought to be autonomous. I mean, I don't like driving. You really?
Now there are self-drive cars, right?
No, I'm saying no, truly autonomous. So now, when regulation allows, because the product's got to be safe, theoretically more safe than me, half drunk, angry, every traffic light makes me very angry. So I just get outside the traffic light in Gurgaon and hit the guy up. I mean, what is safe? Yeah, so I would still say that machines will play a significant role in that.
Right. Pankaj, last words?
That is empathetic. That slap also is empathetic only. Just so it happened, it was little negative.
Yeah. I think I would like to respond a bit to each of them and also just explain that, the part that law plays in all of this, law is pretty much applied ethics and applied morals and applied philosophy. And so that, all of these creators and all these people can maintain their enthusiasm towards, all the good that AI brings, which it does. I think we have the job to kind of anticipate all the sort of faults that it has and make sure that, this enthusiasm can continue. And I think in terms of best practice, what we recommend highly is that, as a user or just as a general consumer of AI, really like educate yourself on what the system is at a very deep level. I think we've given too much importance to, easy access to concepts like, simple explaining of, these are very complex concepts. Just a 5-minute YouTube video might not give you a bigger picture to actually make responsible choices while using these platforms. Also, for creators, for users of AI platforms, read the terms of use. For example, Midjourney or Stability AI, their terms of use clearly say that, we do not guarantee that the output will not be infringing, will not have, it may even have advertisements. It, they don't take any responsibility towards the output. And so if you're a practitioner who adopts this in as part of your daily practice, be mindful of, what exactly you own and, all of that. And secondly, for developers, people who are developing AI platforms, I think in India, Niti Aayog has released a bunch of guidelines on, responsible development, safe development. Transparency is a big one. So all of these concepts should be baked in at a development level so that, the end user safety and things like data privacy, biases are dealt with at a development stage. And I mean, to kind of, talk about what Pratik said and also Sudhir, we're talking about personalization, we're talking about using data, but we're talking about a collective sort of, brain, which is, what is that collective? Is it biased? Are we being able to kind of compile the data in a, responsible manner, which represents us truly collectively?
Right.
I think these are things that cannot be kind of taken lightly anymore. Like start reading.
I think we need a 2.0 version of this panel. I'm feeling rushed. But just to end, before we open to questions, I had a chat with my new friend, ChatGPT, and I asked the question, digital transformation of culture, exploring the role of AI, and this is what I was told. It's important to note that while AI offers numerous opportunities for digital transformation of culture, it should be used responsibly with consideration for values, diversity, and integrity of cultural expressions. Striking a balance between technological advancements and cultural preservation is crucial to ensure AI contributes positively to the richness and diversity of human culture. That sums it up pretty well. Good way to end the panel. But now we're going to open it up to questions, guys. Sorry, we ran a little over, but we can get how many questions? Yeah, and I can't do what Sonjoy did. Huh? Take multiple. We are doing it one at a time. Guys, just go straight to the question. Huh?
Okay, so one of the things that I spoke about was translation. I'm going to keep that, from real world to AI and things like that in data sets. Now, there are things we know and there are things we don't know. AI is only working from the set of things we know and that have been codified. Now, when we look at codification, we look at knowledge systems. Rational knowledge is only one part of it. The rest of the body is sensorial. So in that sense, when I'm asking you, can AI imagine? Is there a possibility of an imagination of making a nouvem, like Francis Bacon talks about, a nouvem thinking? Is it possible? And if so, how does the sensorality emerge?
Okay, and who's this directed to?
It touches about law, it talks about knowledge, it talks about art, culture.
This is another panel by itself. I think we're putting you on our next panel, buddy. You asked very good questions.
Are you asking if AI can create new concepts, new philosophies? I mean, it could, but the observation, the person processing it will still remain you. So if it were to throw gibberish at you as a new philosophy, how much sense would that make to you? But my point is, it is definitely capable of new, for sure. And also, AI is very close to this at a tech level. This concept of emergence, which is, when a sum of parts combine to kind of give new meaning, a new quality to all, which each of the parts didn't have. And so we're kind of seeing it real time with AI. So it's definitely possible.
All right. One more last question.
Yeah, I think
Sensorial.
just super quickly on that. Look, every human artist has always created new things by a combination or synthesis of what they already know. AI is not different, and I think a soft rebuttal to that: semantics matters. AI is not creating anything. People using AI is creating everything, and it's human beings creating things for human beings. Your sensorial experience is coming into that tool, and it manifests, right? And it's already created hundreds of new concepts. Like every week, you go and scour what's trending in AI. These are incredible concepts that have
day.
never existed, right? So
Change
it's
for the
already
day,
happening.
yeah.
It's
I
it-
would just like
yeah.
to add, no, AI can actually individually, without any human intervention, create. It's not happening right now. That's a myth
No,
right
that's
now.
when you're talking
but
about
we're
sentience.
prepping for it.
Yeah, yeah.
No, we're not talking about sentience.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
basically talking about, for example, a new invention without any human intervention at all, which system doesn't have to be sentient.
You will at the least prompt it. That's the human. I mean,
That's human.
That's
Well,
human.
on that happy prompting note, guys, I'm getting dirty stares from here. We're over time, but the panel is going to be around later, so you can ask them all the questions. I've got 5 more to ask them, so I'm going to do that. But thank you very much to this panel for this very exciting discussion. And again, thank you, Harshit, for making me follow that tough act. And now we're on to the next one. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry, we are not breaking for tea right now. We are just going ahead with Jonathan's presentation and then Kamini's, and then we will have tea at 6. So please uh, settle down again. Apologies. Announcement, please tell them to come back. Tell them to come in as announced. Please note, we are going to continue with Jonathan's presentation next. There will be no tea break right now.
Check, check. Please have a seat, everybody. We are starting with Jonathan's presentation. No, we will be here. Once again, apologies. We will be having tea at 6 o'clock. We are moving ahead with Jonathan's presentation. Okay. Okay. I would like to invite Jonathan Kennedy, Director of Arts in India, British Council, who will explore the innovative ways in which artists and technologies collaborate to create immersive experiences, digital art, and interactive installations, shaping the future of the arts landscape. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And those who are heading on today, thank you for staying and skipping the tea break. I'll just do that. Is that okay? Okay, we're tea at 6, tea and coffee at 6. Great. I've got a whole ream of notes, and I'm probably going to refer to them about nil time. So because there's been so much rich conversation and discussion over the course of the day. And thank you, Matt. Thank you, UNESCO. Thank you, Vicky, for bringing us all together. Because whilst I referred to the sunshine sector, and really I'm quoting from Sanjoy's term that he shared with me on WhatsApp a few days back, I do think we're at a kind of pivot point internationally as the lines blur between digital and geographic borders, and between art forms and art sectors who engage with arts and, arts and technology. Is that better? Okay, good, thank you. And there are also challenges, and maybe the challenges are also part of what technology and artists can be part of the solution for. Climate change was certainly one of the Future Fantastic Festival in Bangalore earlier this year, but also I think we've seen examples today where artists, when they're at the center of the conversation, are also part of the solution around climate change and equality of access. If we think of what we mean by this, with the lens of India and the UK, who tells the story owns the story. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, whose data is being put into that machine learning, is also really important. And we know that from our research with British Council and Vicky amongst others, that when technology moves from our hands in the mobile, it quite often becomes a male preserve. In terms of gender equality and access to AI and AI learning from women's experiences, it's really important that those who have all levels of the society are calling those shots. Our diversity communities, LGBTQI communities, all stratas, those who can afford to own the technology are just one sector. And at the minute, we're limited to just that in many ways. So it's important for us to think more around how social inclusion is also part of a solution for the way we now live and using technology for that bigger gain, certainly around climate change. Just from our research in the past couple of years, creative industries in India during COVID are 88% MSMEs, not the large-scale entities, the small scale, the driving force for change and innovation and ingenuity. And individual artists are critical to that. We can talk of our work with government and system change and policy, absolutely important. We can talk of institutions and organizations like this amazing one that we're in today, and IME, and the ones still to come in Bangalore with the Science Gallery opening up. And we know they're also going to be part of that solution to how we open up conversations on arts and technology. But in the end, the artist is the innovator, the inventor. And they are the people who will find the solutions that will make that turn that corner. So it's important that we remember that the artists are both the inventors and the solution of how we look at the world in the future to build empathy between languages and cultures. Again, some of our research, 3% of all literature is translated. That's it, across the world, anything published is translated. So surely a solution to this could be AI, maybe a solution. We know Google Translates is by no means a solution because you need a combination of things. You need the technology to help with the translation to speed it all up. And then in the end, you also need a translator and the writer still to come together to apply the context and the empathy and the local understanding. So ways of opening up with technology being a driver for the change around language and literature and opening up languages that are rarely translated into other works, into other languages, whether it's Hindi or English or German or Spanish. I think there are solutions that technology can provide to us. We just have to understand it's a hybrid model. Because if anything is explained around how you can look at Harry Potter, diminishing the story as it becomes AI, you have to find those combinations of people and technology together to find those answers to understanding how things can work differently. In the way that in the past few years, we can see the music industry has changed. With the advent of Spotify and YouTube and YouTubers and influencers, the impact on musicians' income has dropped hugely because Spotify and YouTube earns next to nothing. So in return, there's been a huge growth, again, in festivals and live performance and gigs. But that's for the big names who pull those big crowds in. The impact on emerging bands, and how do we ensure that emerging bands start to find a new audience and a place on Spotify which earns next to nothing, but find new ways of doing this. And in fact, the UK government, just in the past couple of weeks, has announced a £3 million international budget from the Department of Business and Trade to actively take UK musicians who aren't well known across the world and to tour them. So there are ways of thinking about how the live performing arts and investment from government and the festivals as a platform for emerging artists are really an important part of what the shift in how people behave and how we use technology can also needs to shift along with us. The past couple of weeks, in fact, last month, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport pulled together across sectors from all over the UK, publishers, filmmakers, literature, performing arts, the creative industries as a whole, and it's in 9 segments that the UK has segmented way back in 1997 to look at what the future could look like for the creative industries as we come out of COVID and look for the next 10 years. And it's a combination in the policy paper of public investment and private investment, and still retaining the element of artists' ingenuity and innovation in those areas, especially in the area of arts and technology. Thank you. 10 minutes. So actually, we'll move to a slide. There's a special person in the front row who gives us a prompt. So you get to the next slide. And I'll just give you some examples of work that we've been doing with partnerships in India, because I think there's a really important challenge that you made around the global north and the global south, and how technology is all around those big brother organizations in America and beyond. Actually, the solution is just in working together between cultures internationally. Let's not put these parameters around us that limit what can be done. The data itself just shows how enormous the space is in India, either for broadcast or for creation. And the amazing example of the aesthetic combination of technology and artistry that we've seen today is also about where the artist comes in. It isn't just about therefore consuming on an OTT platform, form. It's also about how art is made aesthetically and artistically as with the use of AI and technology. We'll move to the next slide. Oh, yes, okay. So this is an example of a project that we've invested in with organizations in India and the UK in the past couple of years. Over the past 9 months, we had a season of a project called India UK Together, the simple word of together. Exchange, collaboration, developing a network, and sharing expertise together. And this, obviously, Red Fort in Delhi. And in this, we have 2 EDM artists, one from Derry in Northern Ireland and one from Goa over here. And over the course of 6 months, they worked online on the R&D phase. And then they came together and they toured across India and toured across Northern Ireland and into the UK and played together, each with their integrity around their musical forms, drum and bass, Carnatic music, and finding a new musical language for EDM. And in that collaboration comes new ways of understanding each other's work and working together and playing alongside each other. So they played in Delhi, they played at Magnetic Fields, and so it became part of that wider understanding of empathy and music as a way of using EDM artists to do this, not just in traditional live musician forms. Let's go to the next slide. So this is really around technology and heritage and museum heritage. This is a combination of Antrix in Goa and Crossover Labs in London, who worked with museum objects in the UK and in India. They made them into 3D images and turned that whole 3D imaging process into a visual landscape to form a kind of gaming experience where you walk through, you go through the gaming experience, and you're experiencing both some sense of the objects and the physical location, and you're also, in some instances, part of a gaming experience where there's also a gig playing. Because it played, again, at Magnetic Fields, it played in Bangalore as part of Be Fantastic, it went to the Roundhouse in London. These combinations of live and digital and archives and heritage are all to play for. This is really an iconic building that you all know from Calcutta, the Victoria Memorial Hall, a beacon of colonial history. And they worked with the Natural History Museum and skilled up young people in climate conscious photography, inspired by the International Photographer of the Year exhibition in the UK, and developed a specific edition with young people being skilled in digital photography. And at the launch of it, we video mapped the building and projected in a sequence lots and lots of the young people's photography onto the front of the building. So taking things into a whole other kind of stratosphere, physically, digitally, and climate conscious in terms of the local habitat that were surrounding the museum and surrounding the Botanic Gardens in Calcutta. This is Cameos. So this is really from the Future Fantastic Festival that came from many, many months of collaboration with technologists and scientists and artists, and came to Bangalore as a kind of first AI-generated festival with Indian and UK partners, plus partners from Switzerland and Germany. And this porousness across technology and landscapes and destinations, I think, is really, really important to understand. We're not thinking of a monoculture, we're thinking of all cultures in this live interaction as part of the exchange of cultures and languages. 5 minutes. Thank you very much. So one example, this isn't actually, but there was one example that strikes me, which taps into maybe 30, 40 years back when Tim Berners-Lee was in CERN in Switzerland and was inventing the forerunner to the World Wide Web, but just gathering in data, solving an issue, all this data sitting among academics at CERN. How do you make it into one place so we could all benefit from it? Well, that was the World Wide Web in 1993. Since then, we're now in this fourth industrial revolution that is digital, for sure. And part of the digital solution is also looking at what are the big issues of today. And climate change is clearly one of the most pressing upon all of us. If we have 150 years left to go, let's make sure we sort these things out quicker to extend that longevity of the planet and our life on it. So one of the projects was called the Wood Wide Web. And it looked at trees, and it looked at the seed bank that sit in Kew Gardens, and it looked at technologists, and it looked at dance and movement. And as you stood in front of the screen, it was mapping your movement, and it was using your movement and the text that was all of that data that had been input around the seed bank at Kew Gardens to create a whole new visual tree landscape upon your movement, to make you more conscious of the effect that we have on our climate and the things that we do. Now technology can be a prompt to help us think differently about how we act and behave. Ahead of time. Let's do that, yeah. Are there any questions? Okay. Oh, oh, yeah. Please. Somebody in front of me doing 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then me going.
So, Jonathan, thank you for sharing all of the wonderful projects that the British Council has supported. I'm keen to understand or just hear from you on what are the areas that you found that AI couldn't actually help with, or were there any gaps in the projects that you've supported so far that you would like to see addressed in future projects? And I'm going to qualify this question by saying that I've generally found you to be someone who can introspect very openly about the kinds of projects that you've done. So I feel like you'll be able to really do justice in terms of what are the gaps that you see as someone who's spearheading many of these projects that people can begin to start looking at in future work.
Just to caveat, it's really not me, it's the artists and the organizations working together. But in terms of the learning, I mean, the technology is still emerging and evolving quickly. And sometimes it's just a technical issue of some partners were ahead of the game and some were a bit behind the game in terms of the technology and how they were using it and deploying it. That's part of the nature of the beast. That's the making of art. And all art comes with different challenges, contexts, disagreements, disputes. And in that, you find a solution. Art is about conflict. It's not necessarily a drama, is conflict. No drama, no piece of theatre is about it ends happily, and the making of it end happily. You need drama, you need the grit. And if the grit isn't there, then the learning doesn't really come. Things that go well, who analyzes it? If things go a bit wrong, you're forced to think about what went wrong and why. And not everything did, but that's the nature of cultural relations. That's why it's so dynamic, and that's why it's so important that we continue to think along these lines with an international dimension, because it means we're all learning this in the same but slightly different level.
Was there anything in the Indian context that you can highlight?
Not really, because I think it wasn't that clear cut.
Me here. So Jonathan, how do you all support so many diverse projects? I mean, how do you go about choosing them? And is there some sort of a India strategy versus the global South strategy versus what Skandar has decided?
Yeah. So there's a global strategy for British Council art programs, and that's actually shifted in the past couple of years. In the past few years, we were kind of more self-determined with how we looked at our work in India. We've had a big focus on festivals and crafts, and then looking really at the because festivals are generous. All art forms are covered in festivals. So actually, we haven't had to be too predetermined in what we want to invest in. We just let the artists come to us with an idea. And if the idea was strong, it had good values, we could understand it, it was clearly written, it wasn't full of jargon that was a bit forbidding, then we would walk towards it. We would walk towards it. And for me, it's around not being too prescriptive. Let the artist speak, and then we find the space for it to happen.
Hi.
last, okay. So you talked about that we are in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. And that's a very interesting thing because Klaus Schwab talks about automation. And then we move to automation from a kind of platformization. So how do you look at art and art movements and innovation in art in this automation?
I think artists have always innovated. It's in the nature of the DNA of an artist because you have to survive. On one level, we saw during COVID artists selling their work on Instagram live because they had to, and actually they disrupted the market. No gallerists, no auction houses, sell direct. Artists will always find a solution to some of the problems that they face if they have the means and the knowledge and the education to do it. And that's not equal. And therefore, I think that's an important part of how we look at how we open up technology to those who may not have access to it at the moment. For me, that's a big challenge around social inclusion. If machine learning is based upon lots of white men, we're already in a mess. So it's really important that it's wider than those who may be in this room. Thank you.
You know, I just wanted to take this occasion to thank British Council and especially Jonathan on behalf of FICCI and all of our partners. Jonathan is one of the people who, the minute he arrived in India, he got it. And he was off running from the minute he landed. He comes from the arts sector. He's not a suit. He transformed into a suit briefly, and then he pushed back against him. And just to acknowledge, Jonathan is leaving in October from British Council. You know, the world, British Council works in mysterious ways. But just to say a thank you on behalf of FICCI for being such an amazing partner. Thank you.
In Kutunar, this breastplate transforms the bearer into a divine being. Goddess Bhagavati. Through him, we hear her voice thousands of years ago, until the very end of time, or so we believe. Science, technology, engineering, math. These pillars for children often have a missing ingredient, one that allows them to navigate creatively to any problem. Art. There is no place, no platform, no person who has, can, or who will attempt carefully document the incredible breadth and diversity of Indian art. Or so we believe.
Check. Thank you, Jonathan, for that interactive presentation. We would now like to invite Kamini Zani, our fearless trailblazing director, Museum of Art and Photography, Bengaluru, for a presentation followed by a very special walkthrough of the digital experiences around the museum. Please welcome Kamini.
Okay, so it's here together today and brainstorm and discuss all the issues that exist at the intersection of art and technology. And I see technology really as a phenomenon because it's changed the way we interact with each other and with the external world. And
there's been so much of change because technology has impacted culture and cultural spaces, which is exciting but also a little alarming. So there's so much to talk about, to think about, to act on. But first, let me introduce MAP to those of you who don't know us. Can we have the first? So yeah, okay. So we're a new museum that opened just on the 18th of February this year. So really the new kid on the block. And what we're trying to do is to take art right back into the heart of the community and build a museum-going culture. And that, as you know, is quite a challenge in India because everyone doesn't really think of museums as the most exciting spaces. Also, despite so much progress, we also have a lot of hierarchical structures in place which have reinforced huge social and economic inequalities. So in that scenario, how do we create a museum that is both accessible and inclusive? And so we're really looking at technology to help us bridge that gap, to enable us to interact with our audiences, to engage them, and to also provide them with different approaches to interacting with art. But let me first set the context here. We launched first as a digital space in December, or a platform, in December 2020. Not because we wanted to, because the pandemic forced us to. And we had our board and our advisors saying, why are you obsessed with the physical space? Get online, that is where the conversation is. And when we did that, the world was our oyster because we were connected with a huge, much wider audience than who would actually come into the physical space. But more importantly, what it did was it changed the whole equation between the museum and its audiences, because previously it was a museum that was the dominant voice. But now you had the visitor sitting in the comfort of his armchair, deciding when he wanted to visit the museum, what he wanted to see, how he wanted to see it. And the museum, which so far had held its collections really close to its chest, and with information, because now everyone was scrambling to digitize their collections and put it all out there, because that was the only way to stay connected. And so this really helped us push forward our mission of inclusion and accessibility, because the advantage was that we were a new museum. So we sat down right from the beginning with our architects, with our consultants, DEOC, or the Diversity and Equal Opportunities Center, to see how we could make the museum a welcoming place for people not only with physical disability, but also with certain mental conditions. So what were the kind of facilities that we offered? For example, our lifts. What were the surfaces? They could not be shiny surfaces. It had to be matte surfaces. What were the kind of lights that we used? We also had a quiet room for people with certain mental conditions, which gave them a space to settle down in and calm down and before joining the mainstream again. And online, we have specific fonts, colors, contrasts that we use. We have alt text and Indian Sign Language interpretation for all our programming online, as well as you can see, in the physical space. And the range and the diversity of our collections as well continue this whole message, because you can see in the collection we have pre-modern art, we have modern and contemporary textile, craft, and design, which most museums have in India. But we also include photography, which are our largest holdings, and that's seen in India largely as a form of documentation, not an artistic practice. We also have indigenous artists, again, excluded from most museums because they're not seen as belonging to the high canon of art. And then popular culture, which very few museums, if any, have in India, and that includes Bollywood posters, lobby cards, trade labels, calendar art, all of which reflect mass culture. And the idea really is to collapse these hierarchies between what is perceived as high and low art, and to look and make connections across the collection. And so when a person walks into the museum, he feels, there's some part of my life reflected in this space, and then he's able to connect. So because we launched first as a digital platform, we were able to introduce all the digital experiences that we had developed over the last 2 years seamlessly into the physical space. And so what you're looking at, if some of you have seen on the ground floor, the interactive screen. So whatever is digitized of our artworks at MAP is available for people to browse through. They can zoom into an artwork, they can pull up the metadata, they can scan it through a QR code, download it on their phones or on their desktops. So the idea is still to remain accessible even in the physical space and use these digital tools to make everything accessible. So let me show you how it works actually, and I think Shaina did that for us in this. Okay. Lighting of the lamp. This is another interesting initiative which we introduced at the time when we opened the museum. And usually in India, well, we all light the lamp at an auspicious occasion. The lamp is lit by the VIP, and we said, everybody should be a VIP at MAP, and why don't we let everybody light the lamp? And so the tech team there developed this digital lighting of the lamp, where you scan a QR code and then you have a series of lamps from the map collection pop up on your screen. You choose one that you want, type in your name, and you light the lamp, and it lights up on the screen with your name. So another initiative that really helped us democratize art in a sense. Oops, why is one side of the picture gone? Anyway, so our exhibitions, we also try to use our exhibitions not only to present highlights of the collection, but also to raise certain issues which connect with our community and which we think are important to highlight. So if you go up onto the 4th floor, for example, you will see Visible Invisible, which is a presentation of the permanent collection, which seeks to explore gender issues and also to explore the paradox of how visible women have been in art over the centuries, but how invisible they still are in the public domain. And we collaborated with Meta to create AR filters for some of our works, a small section of the works, just to engage young people. So this is a hook to get them to interact with the work, and then through a series of games and quizzes, they begin to unpeel the several layers that an object has and the stories that it can tell. So MAP Labs really lies at this intersection of art and technology. And we decided that we're living in the IT capital of the country. So this is a resource that we really need to tap into. So we first approached Accenture, and so they agreed to create for us a 3D persona of one of our most iconic artists, M.F. Hussain, using artificial intelligence. So what you can do is actually chat with Hussain, ask him questions, and he responds. And the idea was to get young people to discover an artist whom they probably had never met or encountered in their lifetime in a much more fun, interactive way. So let me try and play this for you so it gives you an idea of how it works. Can you play it from there? Oops, we're not getting sound. Oh no.
What is your name? You can call me Hussein Khan, but my own name is Hussein. How old are you? Not very young. As of today, I am 7. How would you describe yourself? I think it is
was the initial one introduced in Bangalore. In this world, was the time machine in 1955.
So that was Hussein. Oops. Okay, the second project that we did under Map Labs was Interwoven, which was a collaboration with Microsoft under their AI for Good initiative. And it really looked at cross-cultural encounters. It drew on the great textile collection of MAP, linking it to textile collections in partner museums in different countries across the globe, and across geographies, across time periods, across cultures, and all based on motifs, designs, patterns. So you could have two kinds of journeys as a user of the platform. You could either use the curated journeys, which had been developed by the team at the MAP Academy who worked on this project, or as a user, you could step on and create your own journey. And the fun part about AI is that each time it's a new journey. So if you, for example, typed in the paisley, and so you could have started perhaps with the bote in Persia, which then reappears as the ambi or the kairi in India. And then finally, you see it as the paisley in the UK, which also appeared on the jackets of the Beatles. Yeah, quite an iconic design. So this was a great fun project as well. So I wanted to tell you a little about the MAP Academy, which is a research wing of MAP. It has two components. One is the encyclopedia, which is the first online encyclopedia of Indian art. It was launched in April 2020, last year. And last year. And it has about 2,000, it began with about 2,000 entries, which it gradually is building up on. It also has articles, blogs, glossaries on a whole range of South Asian art. And the second component is the courses that it offers, both short-term and long-term courses. So we began with a taster course on textiles. The other courses are being built around it. And then we plan to introduce courses on modern and contemporary art. Another project that I wanted to share with you is Museums Without Borders, which emerged during the pandemic when people and objects could not travel. And we said, why don't we make them travel virtually? So it juxtaposes an object from MAP with an object from a partner museum. And when you bring objects into dialogue, you get some really interesting conversations, which were articulated by the curators on either side. And so here you see the work of Jangar Singh Sham, one of our most talented indigenous artists, the Gond Pradhan artist, juxtaposed with the owl by the Inuit artist Kenuk Ashwak from the Rizdi collection. And finally, MAP virtual greetings. So we decided that festivals are such a big thing in India. Why don't we use festivals to actually get people to engage with art? So what we did was we chose 12 festivals during the year and then identified an object that was related to that festival from the MAP collection and then animated it. And it's been wonderful because, and then we would send it out to people as greetings for the festival. And in turn, our audiences would send it out to their loved ones as greetings. So many of them have gone viral, including Amitabh Bachchan retweeting our greeting on Holi. So I thought it'd be fun to watch this one. This is on Dashera. Can you play it from inside again? Because it's... Go ahead and play from there. Okay, so all that we've done at MAP so far is focused on trying to bring audiences into MAP to experience the museum. But now we're looking at how we can take MAP out to people, to spaces that, where we have people who probably may have never encountered a museum or art. And so we're looking at spaces like railway stations across the country, where we set up digital experience centers, because we believe that everyone needs to be inspired by and experience the transformative power of the arts. So thanks very much. That brings me to the end of my presentation. But I'd like to ask Mayank, who heads technology at MAP, to come and just tell you about the digital experiences that we're going to walk you through just now. And Mayank, and I can see Raghav here as well, they've worked under great pressure to produce all of this that you're seeing just now.
Thanks, Kamini, and welcome all of you to what I think is going to be an exciting walkthrough of what we've built in digital experiences at MAP. I'll just start by one little sentence. You know, it was just about 3 or 4 years back when all that technology had was a room in the basement, and it was essentially for providing all the IT infrastructure, etc. But the whole transformation happened when we started building these digital experiences, these experiences that are powered by the futuristic technologies. And that's what we've started doing at MAP. So whatever you see in terms of experiences today at the walkthrough right after this, I just wanted to throw out there, we've taken care of building it intelligently, building it so that it's immersive, it's innovative, it's interactive. We start with the lighting of the lamps, which Kamini just spoke about. Just to give you an idea, every lamp on that particular setup is actually a real lamp that exists in the MAP's collection, in the museum's collection. And essentially, you get to scan a QR code and you go ahead and give in your details and you'll be able to light it up. So that's the first thing I would really encourage you to do that. The Saskin Gallery, which is right on this floor, on the first floor, is exhibitions on demand. So there are a lot of paintings and there are a lot of photographs, but the physical space is limited. So what we thought of is we give you the option to select what exhibition you want to watch, and you get to see it on some very interesting screens that we've researched on, and in a manner that's it's very interestingly curated so that you can actually view paintings to photography to whatever you'd like to see through the menu. We have Cumulus. Kamini showed you a video about how you can interact with with our entire collection that is online. We have 5 screens on the ground floor. That's something you can do. Holograms is something which is futuristic. It's just beginning to see the light of the world. It's just something that is, fast emerging. We've used holograms quite extensively. When AI was being used to develop Hussein, we actually came forward and we told Accenture we'd like to do it on a hologram. So you'll see Hussein down there today. You can actually go ahead and have a chat with him. We love it when people ask questions and try to challenge the system. And it's always fun when he doesn't answer because, this is one place I can stand up and say, yeah, the system is learning, So, but that's exciting. You must have a chat with Hussein. There's also the hologram wall where you'll see an interesting take on paintings. We want people to be interested in seeing the story behind the painting, or what is the artist trying to convey, or what is the museum interpreting out of it. So you'll see some holographic experiences where you can immersively go into the paintings and see what either Jamini was painting or anyone else, or many of the artists out there. But you'll just see some samples today. An exciting project we've picked up in digital is the hologram tours. The 3D holo tours are picking up 100 heritage sites of India and creating an immersive walkthrough through the technology that we've grown out here. So 100 sites from Chettinad to Bikaner Havelis, to Tripura, the Unakoti ruins, to Ladakh, to Varanasi, the Ganga Aarti, Murshidabad, the Badi Koti, the Hazardwari, to Goa, to Kerala. We are capturing it all. And this is an ongoing project for us. We'll give you a little glimpse of that. If you'd like to do that, that's at the lower ground floor. And also finally, we also have the artifacts that have been scanned by our in-house photogrammetry team that uses some of the best scanning techniques available today. And you can have a look at them. You can zoom in, zoom out, or just play around with them. So I do have my team out here. What we'll basically aim to do is walk you through all these experiences. Since we can do 4 to 5 in a group, so I'm going to have to split it that way. And I'd request that you restrict it to 4 to 5 people at one experience, but we've got 6 or 7, so I think you'll just get to go around and experience them in any ways. So have a good time experiencing it. I'm going to be right around here to walk you through, or if you want to talk about anything on digital or technology, happy to answer that. Have a good time. Thanks.
May I request Kamini and Sadhana to please come on the stage?
So we are delighted to have been able to host this because we really see MAP as a space for ideas and conversations that are initiated through art. So we're really grateful to all our partners for coming together, but also to you, the audience, because this is the space for interaction, for engagement with us. We can't do this alone. You have to be there, and then the whole thing comes together. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank our team who has worked so hard because we've had 2 conferences in a week. That has been tough. Led by Shilpa. I want to say thank you, Shilpa, Rahul, Kushi, Annie, Alice, all the others. I hope I've got all the names here, but Priya is the anchor who held it together. So Priya gets a separate thank you for doing that. Yes, Shaina, all of you there, thank you so much for all that you've done. I'd like to thank Mintu as well, and who else? Kiran, yeah, Mintu and Kiran, thank you for staying on your feet the whole day and putting people into their places, seeing that everyone got water. All these things are small, but they make a huge difference. So thank you, everybody. Sadhana.
So for those of you who joined us late, I did beg indulgence and we did begin with giving thank you in the morning. So an event like this, as if you look at the thank you slide, we can only say how enriched we are that we've had people across 8 organizations helping to put this together. And I must say, I add to what Kamini said, but I do want to make a note that all our speakers on their own initiative, vested in the arts, have traveled from every other city to come here. So big round of applause to the audience and to all the speakers and to every single member that you see in the slide. Thank you so much.
My biggest thank you is to Sadhana for putting this whole program together, yeah, and for coordinating this so ably. To Sandhya, who has been from BIC, who has been running around working with our team and doing a great job. Thank you so much. And Dhwani, who has been working behind the scenes in the weeks leading up to it, and who landed this morning and is on her feet here. So thank you, everyone.
Sarvan and Raj, the technician from BIC.
Yeah. So thanks, everyone.
There will be a couple of groups that will be led. So we will be having 3 groups, one led by Khushi, who is right there, one by me, and one by Mayank's team. Yeah. So we can proceed for the walkthrough. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.